I think we're live. So hi everybody, good evening. It's really nice to see you guys again. It's been a while. I know a lot has happened before now. I mean, Nigeria has been a very, very weird place to be. And before I introduce the guest out, I wanted to just talk about what's going on in Nigeria. We're currently having I've been trying to think about whether I should continue with the stream or not because of what is going on in Nigeria right now. And it's been really crazy how the youths have decided to stand up for their rights and just realize that this is a democracy and they have the power to decide who leads and what is happening. And it's really amazing. And it's so unfortunate that a lot of youths have lost their life for the cause. And I just wanted to use this time to, I don't know, give like an eulogy about a friend. We're really never close. It was just someone I knew in the design community who lost his life for this cause this week. Okay, I really, really hope you're in a better place right now, and I pray God guides you, and I pray and you would never be forgotten. Thank you very much. Sorry, I just had to get that out before continuing
Oh, of
because
course.
Nigeria is a mess right now. And today we have the amazing Nidia Dias. I hope I pronounced that name right. She's one of the best art directors in. I keep saying that. I always call it now like the queen of art direction. Anytime I describe her to a friend, I'll be like, yeah, that's Nidia Diaz. She's like the queen of art direction because I've been obsessed with her work since last year. Like she is one of the people who inspired me to start art direction, and it's just been amazing seeing her create this amazing work. It's been really great. So Nidia, how are you doing today?
Good, good. No pressure with the queen of art direction, all the stuff. No, good. Pressure.
So I really hope sorry, I used to try my best to talk about the guest, like where they started, but I would really like you to maybe tell us about yourself, how you started a direction, where you are right now, and I don't know, hopefully just tell us about yourself.
Okay, cool. So yeah, hi, I'm Nidia Dias. I'm from Portugal. I'm actually currently living here at the moment in Portugal. Um, yeah, so I didn't have like the straight path straight into arts when I was in school, high school here. I was in more into like science and engineering, kind of math stuff. So I ended up here going actually 1 year to engineering school or university. But realized very soon that that wasn't what I wanted to do. So the year after my first year, I swapped. I was able to swap to graphic design
Oh,
because that's what I realized that I really want to do. So yeah, so I did a course here in Portugal in university, 3 years on like graphic design and multimedia kind of thing like that. So it's mainly like Photoshop, InDesign, graphic design, logos, and all this stuff. But we did had a little bit of like After Effects and filming and stuff like that. Just a bit of everything. So as I was finishing the course, I started learning and discovering After Effects and Cine 4D, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. I wish I could animate my posters and yada. So I was like, okay, how can I continue and move on to do this? So there was nothing at the time in Portugal that would be like motion graphics, and there wasn't much resources online like there are now. So I just pretty much Google where can I learn motion design. First, it's all over the world, but then my parents was like, it's too far. You have to kind of concentrate in Europe. So I found school in Sweden called Hyper Island. So I went there and did a motion design course, like a short one, because I also didn't want to spend more 3 years in university. So I was really
yeah.
trying to find like a small thing just to kind of get me, like get me in the thing. So yeah, I went there, had really fun time there. And as part of the course, we had like 3 months internship that we had to do, and it could be anywhere. It didn't have to be in Sweden. So I just applied to a bunch of studios, and then I got lucky. I got some studios interested, and I ended up moving to London to do my internship at a studio called Mainframe. And so I was mainly like a motion designer, like a generalist. That's how I started. And then after my internship finished, I actually got offered a job at the Mainframe where I was doing my internship. So that was like pretty cool for me because he was like, oh, I don't know what to do. And then they're like, hey, we offer you a job. I was like, nice. So I spent there about 3 years as a motion designer, just generalist. But as I was there, I was doing a lot of style frames. So it was something that they started giving me to do. And that's when I was like, oh, this is cool. I like doing the style frames. So yeah, so that's kind of where I started thinking like, oh, maybe I can just do like designing and style frames. So that's kind of like the Kickstarter of like in my head of like, oh, this can be a career. So yeah, then I was just like from that point when I figure out, oh, this is more the part that I enjoy doing, was trying to figure out how to do it as a career and how to get there. So I did 1 year. I quit my job and I applied to some graphics design studios just to kind of have a bit of the graphic design background. I still wanted to have that idea of like typography and all the stuff because I thought that would be very helpful for me. And once I was more acquainted with that, like a bit of a year, a little bit less than a year, I started like looking at motion studios again, but that could be looking for a senior or a designer. So yeah, I was lucky and I was in contact with Future Lux in London. They were really starting at the time, but someone from the studio that I was at, graphic design studio, they showed me their work and I was like, oh, it's pretty cool. So I just sent them an email and they said, hey, do you want to come up by the office? So, that's kind of how it kickstarted. So I was a designer for Future Lux. And that's really when like things went into more like just designing. And then, yeah, so that was like the beginning of it all. I spent about,
How many years ago was this like?
well, I finished Hyper 2011, I think.
Wow, I was probably like 10 years old when
yeah. Yeah, I look younger than I am.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
A lot of people
amazing.
like, how old are you? Like, I don't. When I was in London, living there, I always got asked for my ID every time I went to a pub, even if I didn't even ask for alcohol. They're like, hey, you need to be more than 18 to get in here. I was like, dude, I'm definitely more than 18. So yeah, I always had that fan. But yeah, so Future Lux was definitely the more fully designed. Like I will still do motion there because it was at the time was a very small studio, so we kind of had to do a bit of both, but I was really concentrating on
I
doing a
think
lot of style
future
frames.
tools have grown
Yes,
from
I
when
don't
they
know.
started.
Yeah, I don't know how many they are now, but yeah, definitely bigger than when I was there. We're a very small team, but it was fun. Like it was super fun to be there and learned a lot. And yeah, and then I think a year or something after, I don't know, a year and something after, there's a studio in London called Analog Studios, and they were looking for an art director. And one of the one that worked there at Analog, one of the partners, he used to work at Mainframe when I was in my internship.
Oh,
So he had followed my work because then he ended up leaving Mainframe to join Analog. So he had been following my work for the years, which I didn't know. So they were looking for an art director, and I was like, "Hey, do you want to come for a talk?" And I was like, "Sure, me, all right, sure." So I think that was like a good kickstart for me because I wanted to be an art director, but I think I wasn't. I didn't felt I was ready or prepared. So I was very like, I'll just do my design stuff. And then getting someone saying, "Hey, we're looking for an art director. We've seen your work. You want to come for a talk?" So that's when I swapped from being just a designer to then becoming an art director. And yeah, learned a lot that first year. Like how to do things. And then that's been the life since then.
wow. That's like amazing. Like what I really like about your story is how like old relationships are like you had old relationships with people and those relationships are like what brought you to where you are now. Like for example, the partner at Analog who was also a partner, sorry, who was also working at Mainframe
Yeah.
and how he paved that way for you. I think that's one thing I'm still learning to do, which is managing relationships. It's kind of really difficult because I'm not a people person.
Well,
I'm
I
not a
think
people
it's
person.
Yeah, I think it's like I'm a bit shy as well, but I feel like there is like I always feel like if you do a good work, right, people will keep on following what you do, like the same way that I do now, right? When I see people or I work with someone that's done a great job, I will keep my looking out for them and like seeing what they're doing and maybe hopefully work with them later. So, but yeah, for me, when I got when I got them like saying, hey, we're looking for art director, I was a bit confused. I was like, you've been following my work? Really? Oh, that's cool. So yeah, I was a bit shocked at the time, but it was a great way for me to like kind of jump and kickstart that more like art direction role. That was great.
That is amazing, honestly. I really, really love your story, and I love like the transition from graphic. It's kind of like mine. I've been doing this for like 5 years. I've been in between graphic design and motion design. I started out as a graphic designer just randomly. And I was just playing with my computer and it just discovered, boom, I could do this on CorelDRAW. Then I switched to Photoshop. Then I got a few people who really liked it and they really, really wanted to help me. And they introduced me to a couple of people and introduced me to clients. Then I started hating graphic design because I wasn't really thinking enough. It was just like I was solving no problems. I was just creating flyers or creating posters or doing one thing or the other, but it felt repetitive and I wanted something new. So I just woke up one morning and I fired all my clients to just put up a post. I'm no longer taking graphic design clients again. I'm now a motion designer. And that's how it started for me. Even if I didn't know anything about motion design when I started, I just did it because I just liked it. I just liked the fact that I'm trying to say something and I'm actually thinking and I don't really have to use the same solution for multiple clients because you're solving an actual problem. But Nigeria doesn't really have motion design isn't a clear career path. Like you cannot wake up one morning and say, I want to become a motion designer. Well, I can. I can because I've done it. But then for the first 2 years it was hell. Like there was no money, no clients. I was broke as hell. And I'm in a country where design isn't really appreciated, so it's kind of worse. But yeah, I am. It got to a point. I started a team, and that's where I'm. That's where I am right now. And I really like as though your story isn't as brutal as mine, and you
Yeah.
had the opportunity to move quickly. But it's
Yes.
kind of similar how we have that same graphic design background.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like for me, I always kind of, I feel like I always have that going back to that root, right, of the graphic design. Because I really love it. Like I still, when I'm looking at, like Behance and all the stuff, I still look at graphic design and logos and all that stuff, flyers and all stuff, because I really like that.
I think you see it in your work, especially like there was this work you did that it felt like you would see from that work that this person has a lot of experience with layout and composition. Like, let me find it. Sorry.
But yeah, I think it's like I remember being in university at learning like graphic design and all the stuff, and I remember like the teacher would keep on like being very like you have to be things have to be balanced and all the stuff. And I was like, no, no, no. But then after so many times of doing things, it just becomes part of your brain, right?
Yes.
It's not like I'm like obviously if I'm putting design on the stuff, I'll put grids, but at some point that you're just like oh, I'm just you just look at things and you just it's part of your brain, right? You're not even thinking like does it need to be balanced? Does it have to contrast? I feel like after so many times of like doing it, I think it just becomes part of it, like part of you, how you do it and all
Yes.
that stuff. Yeah.
Okay, the next question. So like how do you approach art direction in motion? Like how do you like how do you start when you're about to start it? Like how do you do it when you start a project? I wanted to like get a little bit insight on your process for working
Yeah.
and can you like share a
I
little
guess
bit about that?
yeah, I guess it always depends project to project and client, but yeah, you always gonna get like a brief somehow, right, from the
Yeah.
client, and I always like to kind of go through it and try to understand. I would say what we're selling, but like there's always a product that something involves. What is that? And try to understand as well what the company has done before that we're working with, and as well like kind of I like to sometimes as well look at their competitors because you don't want to do something that they're doing, right? So I do that, and then once I have that kind of more like research done, I'll go through what like the story, like how can we present um, this project or product or stuff like that, and what's the idea behind it. So I'll try to like come up with a few ideas, a few concepts, and then for each concept, I'll try to get like a mood board, kind of like how I see that it could go, because I'm not very good at drawing, so that's kind of my go-to. It's just like mood boards at the beginning. And then obviously, depending if while we work in the studio, sometimes we may hire a storyboard artist or not, depending on if it's necessary. Like if we feel like we
So you don't
should.
do your storyboards yourself?
Oh, dude, you don't want to see my drawings. They're terrible. No, they're terrible. I draw very like I don't have anything here, but it's like I draw much more like abstract stuff, like random line drawings. I don't have anything here in the moment, just notes from projects. But yeah, I can't draw properly. Unfortunately, it looks terrible. I may do it for my own sake, like not showing to anyone, like very bad random small like sketches just to be like, oh, will this work? But yeah, so I rely a lot actually on mood boards, writing concepts, like writing down things. And I wouldn't say like I do a mind map, but kind
Is
of
there
like,
any like writing in your process? Like, do you write like while you're working? I mean,
I
like,
take a lot of notes. Like I do a lot of notes, and I use a lot of post-its as well. A lot of post-its, great
yeah.
stuff, great reminder of things. And like I have a few here. There's like deadlines I have. It's like just seeing. It's like really like this is on my monitor. some at the moment. Yeah, I write down a lot of like kind of small things. Imagine like if I'm doing, you have like the shoe there. It's like, okay, is a shoe, it needs to represent this word. How can I represent comfort? And it's like trying to think of things that can represent that. And then from there, it's like trying to get ideas. And they don't always come, like right away, or, like it's that, at least with me, it's not that idea that, oh, you're always creative. I'm not. Like sometimes it's just like, how can I get a concept for this? Like how can I do something that is still fun and interesting, but also, getting this concept of comfort, for example, the one with the shoe. So definitely there's a process there of going, like it's
You
not
like,
like, yeah, I don't get a
sorry.
brief and I go like, oh, here's the idea. Like sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm talking with a client and they're talking through the brief, and I maybe like my brain is like tinkering and being like, oh, maybe, oh, I remember this, or maybe that will be cool. And I'm just taking notes as the client is saying, and I'm like, check this out, or go to check this, or I remember this project from a few years ago. It was really cool, maybe like a good inspiration. So I may do those notes as I'm in a client call or going for the brief. But yeah, sometimes I'm like, put my headphones and I'm like, okay, need to come up with ideas.
Do you like check other people's work while you work? Because I kind of have that issue with the advent of social media. I'm a social media addict. I'm confessing to myself. I kind of have this, like, when I've stopped logging in on Instagram nowadays. That's why it took a long time for me to post about the event. But before, I would be at, like, I'll be staring at Man versus Machine's work. It's my dream studio to work at, by the way. I'll be staring at their work, and when I'm working on the project, it kind of clouds my judgment, because it becomes less about what I'm trying to say with the project, and it's not more about it's not more about how can I get something that looks like what Man versus Machine is doing. Do you ever like go through that phase of just comparing yourself or checking other people's work?
Well, I think like when I get the brief and I try getting the concept, I rarely go straight into like seeing other people's work or straight to Man vs. Machine or stuff like that. So websites, I do really try first to just kind of think of an idea, like close my eyes, like listen to some music, think about the brief and all the stuff, and just write some notes. And then once I think I've got some ideas for a few concepts, then I will try and find like good reference that kind of represent or kind of show a bit how that can go forward. But yeah, I'm not going straight to like, oh, let me go to Man vs. Machine or Future Lux website or
For me, it
Tendril.
wasn't like straight, but it's like in the process of it. It's not like I go straight to it. It's just like when I log on social media, it's the first thing I see.
Yeah, no, I think I try to like, if it depends on the concept, and if I'm finding, for example, again with the one with the shoe, the comfort, like once I got the idea, was more like, okay, let's look at bouncy castles, and like let me look at balloons, and also like let me see actually if someone has done this before, and that's how the research goes, rather than going to a specific studio, thinking of like, let me check the work. But it's more trying to think, okay, we want to create this balloonify thing, how, like let me see
How do
what
you
is out
solve that problem?
there, and yeah, and like let me see actually how bouncy castles look like and how the material looks like, and like, so it's more in that sense, like to help then tell the concept at the beginning, rather than going first to like someone's work. It's like, hey, this is what we're going to do. Is more like first think of the concept, think of the idea, and then you go into like, okay, let me find references and all the stuff. So that comes after you kind of got that concept idea.
Yes. So like when I talk to my Nigerian friends who don't know you, because a lot of everyone they didn't know you, I was like, guys, you use Microsoft Edge, you've seen our work. So I was talking about one of your work that really showed the fact that you knew a lot about design and composition. It was this project with an ant and an I can't find the exact case study, but it was like this finger and an egg and there's like a feather. It's like you balance it.
Yeah, yeah,
And it was
it's on
just
my
really
Behance.
incredible.
Yeah, that one was just many years ago. That one. It was like I had this idea for one image, which was the fried egg kind of like melting down, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like the kind of playing with that idea of the I forgot now the name of
Let me
the
find
painting,
your Behance.
the persistence of memory. So I really wanted to kind of pick that painting and kind of get inspired by that, but with the fried egg. I don't know. I think I got, I don't know when I got this idea. So I was doing that one, and actually I had idea, wrote it down, do some mood board, and then didn't do anything for it for about a few months until until one day I was like, I need to do this, otherwise I'm never going to do it. So then I started doing that particular image, and I showed it to my husband, and he was like, oh, it's cool, but you should do more. You should do it like a series, like. And I was like, maybe. So then I had to come up with like, okay, other concepts, and then balance was one of them. And so it was like going from just doing one image to then my husband was like, oh, that should be a series all about eggs. You should do something.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay. Then I was like, okay, how can I play with the concept of the egg? And then it was like trying to find ideas of like, what can I put the egg on? What situations can I put an egg on? And that was kind of like the how it turned out to be that project. But it was a few years ago
And
now.
it looked amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, it was just a personal project. I was just trying. I think I was just like practicing. I wanted to practice like modeling, lighting. Like just do a thing from the whole and from beginning to end, and like being a bit surreal and all the stuff. So I'm just playing. But yeah, in my head, I was like, I'll do one picture, and then it became like a full on project. Like concepting and like having ideas, some work, some didn't, and then it would go like to my husband. It's not that my husband was a client, but I would be like, okay, so I had these ideas. Which ones do you do you prefer most? Okay, interesting. Okay, let me. All right, I'll start with that one then. I like that. So yeah, I had a few more ideas than what I posted, but at some point I was like, I'll probably just keep on finding more egg ideas. So I just stopped at 6.
That I want to check that egg case study, but then I'm really attracted to this Microsoft one. Like anytime I just check it, it sucks me in because it looks amazing.
Yeah, it was a fun project. It was fun and interesting project because when Microsoft approached Tendril to do this project, it was like the first time that they were kind of getting into this language, the fluent language, and
Aesthetic.
yeah, so it was the first time that they're really going for something like this. So it was a bit of like, there was a lot of hanging on our shoulders, to make this a really cool piece. But we also had a very long, which is not normal sometimes, a very good design phase where we could just like explore, like try different things and see what could work rather than just going like, oh, here's a few style frames, let's go into animation. So we did actually had a very good.
How long did it take you to make this entire project with the design exploration phase?
I'm not sure. It was 2 years ago, but I'll say
Was it
2
up to like a
months.
year?
No, 2
6 months.
months.
Wow.
No, 2 months or 3 months. I know that the design phase was quite a long. It was long for the usual. Whereas like at least I think we had about a month. I think just like trying to really nail the design. But then once we got into that, it was just like full, like full ahead.
Yeah.
Let's do this. But yeah, it was really interesting. I mean, the creative director from Microsoft, Nando. I mean, he a lot of it came from him as well, sharing his ideas and his mood boards and things that he was thinking of as well. So it was a lot of back and forth. So there's a lot of good back and forth to really like get to where that project ended up being. And it was a lot of like, again, like the storytelling. How can we communicate like the specific thing? So they gave us, imagine, few keywords that was important to kind of showcase on the new Microsoft. There was speed, there
That's
was
one thing I
like
appreciate
AI.
about
There
motion.
was
The fact that you're talking about something like a concept and you're finding the most creative ways to just say that thing. Like,
like the collaboration. Like we had to talk about collaboration and because we're using the glass and the colors, first we're like, oh, can we kind of have this gradient of colors while people are, collaborating, but then since we also had live action, we really had to be sure that the things that we're doing in 3D would also make sense mixed with live action. So that was, I think, the biggest part where trying to figure out, like where this 3D goes into like the story, so it just doesn't feel like they're separate from each other.
yeah,
So
it
that
felt
was the
like
first.
one render. Like the live action and the 3D feels like one render. Like you did
Yeah,
everything
we
in
try.
3D.
Yeah, we tried to balance it. Like obviously making sure that the same way that the lighting we try to do in 3D, we're doing it in live action and vice versa, so they feel part of the same rather than just very distinct things. So that was, yeah, for me it was a great challenge, like especially having the live action into it, because a lot of the stuff I used to do before was just full on 3D, right? It's a different kind of thinking. So, in prepping for the live action as well, how many shots, like you have a budget, so you can only film X amount of days, the production cost is different. So it was really like, as an art director for me, like that, it was like a very big project for me to be an art director on it. And like you said, you still go back to it, and that was done 2 years ago. Yeah, like
Yes.
a bit more than 2 years ago. And I still get people referencing things that two,
Like
2 years
I
later,
still
I
reference
still
that
get,
project
yeah,
every time.
I
Every
still
time I
get.
start something.
Yeah, so it's for me, it's like it's super cool to see that like people still look at that project, and I'm sure like Tendril also has that same feeling, and Microsoft, like being people talking about it still 2 years later, especially for me, like like I've done the project, you're after a project is done, a lot of times you don't want to, you're like, okay, I'm happy, I'm proud of it, but like I spend a lot of time in it, let's move on, and like, and it's fun to look back at it nowadays, like 2 years later, and see things and all this stuff. So yeah.
Yes. So like the next question, what's your best advice for anyone who wants to try out art direction in motion? This question is for me. I wanted you, like I didn't know, I don't know if I'm doing it right or if I'm doing it wrong, but next year I really want to go full on motion art direction, and I want to try out applying for studios like man versus machine first, and just
Oh.
try out applying for them and working with them. So like what would be your advice for me?
Well, I mean, I guess everyone is different, and like I said, like every studio or agencies and all stuff have a different concept. But for me, when I was in that position of I really want to be an art director, so this is kind of talking about more my experience. I really felt like I wanted to understand again, have that background of the graphic design and being sure that the layout, typography, and all the stuff, I was good at it and I have a good understanding of it. And obviously as well, I thought that I needed to understand the pipeline of the project. I needed to understand, how animator works, how long things takes, like if we're doing effects, would that be a Cinefree thing? Would that be a Houdini thing? Like trying to understand really the whole part of the spectrum instead of just, like, so when you're getting a project and a brief and there's a budget assigned to it, obviously you need to understand, okay, I can't just come up with a crazy idea and think that for the time that we have, it's going to be executable, right? So you need to think, how can we make this in the time that we have, in the budget that we have? Is this doable? How long would it take roughly for this or that? Obviously, I'm not like an expert in every area, but just having a very like overview of how things work, it's a good way. And then obviously talking with the artist itself and like, hey, how long do you think this will take? Will this be possible? And I think that having that understanding of the pipeline, I think is super important. And then having that graphic design background and concept, I think that's also super important because that's where the project starts, is pitching an idea, like pitching the look, how it's gonna be. And then, like once that goes forward, that then is putting what you thought into like the whole project. And it becomes a lot of management, like making sure that the story is being told, and there's feedback, you have to manage a team. So there's a lot happening that I didn't understood at the time, that you had to do so much of that, managing more than like designing. But I feel like for me was making sure that I was getting better at look dev and lighting and all the stuff because of the style frames, but also having that background in graphic design and overall having a good understanding of the whole process. Because you're gonna have people asking you, okay, producers may ask you like, okay, should the animators start next week? And you have to know like, will we be ready for the animators? Like you don't want to hire a freelancer and then he's sitting around and not doing anything, right? So you kind of have to like juggle a lot of things and talking with clients.
You have to
So
be a great communicator.
yeah, yes, there's a lot of parts involved, in this kind of like machine, a lot of parts. So I think it's like having the good understanding of all the parts, and like you said, like you have to communicate, like you have to pitch, like be sure to like be ready to like present ideas, like talk with the team, like you have to convey an idea. And sometimes, I may talk to some artists and they look at me as like, I probably explained totally wrong what I'm thinking, and you have to like, and yeah, for me, it was still like, I'm still learning, like I'm not like everyone makes mistakes and all that stuff, and I'm part of it, like I still do those mistakes, but that's how you learn, right?
Yeah. So do you have like any actionable steps I can take from where I am right now?
No, sorry, can you repeat?
Do you have like any actionable steps I can take, like where I am right now? Because I want to turn it to a list later, like a checklist later.
No, I don't know. I feel like I feel it's good that you look back at your work and you try it, and like I want to say comparing to other people is good, but it's like try finding like, okay, if I want to do a project like that, like how can I approach it, and try doing it yourself. Like try to like what I was doing at the time was I was doing a lot of personal projects, like trying to create, like style frames for title sequence, style frames for a product, even if it was just personal project, but it was just for me to kind of like, okay, if I have a TV, whatever show that maybe the story would be like this, okay, how would I do the style frames for it? How would I get the concept? So it was more like, for me, it was a lot about practicing, getting those things in, and then like things are always evolving. So, like I keep on having to like learn stuff as well, right? You need to be, I feel like you always have to, like be able to, in my case, because I don't draw very well, I tend to try to keep on with like Scene 4D and like redshift, lighting, shading, making sure things look really nice. Like I love Photoshop, so depending on the project, I may be more like Photoshop and After Effects thing. So it's also like trying to understand what tools to use in my case. Like I'm trying to always thinking like, okay, what would be the best approach for this? For like, do I have time to do like a proper style frame? Great. Do I have not enough time? Okay, how can I explain this idea? So I think it's just getting those personal projects, like thinking like, okay, I'd love to do, this type of project. So maybe do a personal project like that, like just go from beginning to end, like
yes,
like like I was going to call it the fake brief, but like just like fake a brief, like a product or
doesn't have to
something.
be fake though. It could just be like, you could just be as simple as doing your own like spec work. I think that was what Ariel Acosta called it, spec work. Just doing like a brief for Apple or something.
Yeah. Like imagine like if you've seen some work that is like, oh, I think that was cool, but like how would I approach that? Like if I was asked to art director design for this particular product or this particular thing, what would I do? And then just go from there, like I think it's a good practice.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm going to take my time. I have like a lot of I have a lot of personal projects that I have to do, but I haven't really had the time for personal projects because of my client work. I'm wondering how you manage. Do you still like have the time to do personal projects, even with? I'm sure you probably did a few months ago, but right now, do you have time to do personal projects?
Well, that's the thing. Like before I had a baby, I did have time for personal projects. Now it's kind of a bit more, a bit harder on that sense. I do try, like, what am I kidding? I'm thinking, I do some personal projects still, but not as, I don't think I'm doing them as full on as I did before. So what I do is more trying a new technique or trying to find a new technique or just experimenting with something, or like, oh, maybe there's something new in Cinema 4D. Like, I'll just maybe try and what can I get from that? Can I get something cool? Like, can I understand this part? But it's not like the egg project where it's like full on idea, like, let's do this, let's do a series. I at the moment I don't have time for like a full on project in that sense, because besides being a mom now, I also obviously have freelance work. So it's it's a mix of balancing life.
A mix of
Obviously, I don't want to.
everything.
Yeah, I don't want to be just like working, on other stuff. But yeah, I always love doing personal projects a lot because that's how a lot of them, that's how I grow, right? And then how I got into the thing about where I am and like how I got better at specific things. So I definitely like still want to continue to do them, but a few times I don't even like share it. I have some in the back that I was like, oh, I need to share this, but yeah, it's just playing mainly now. It's
So
not
you have a
like,
lot of personal projects that you haven't shared, like stored away.
no, I have just a few small tests, and the thing is that a lot of times I start something and then I don't finish it, but I save it, and then maybe like in a few months I'll go back to it. I was like, oh, forgot about this. What can I do now about this? And it's always cool to go back. But for example, those ones like the Control Chaos, the Quick Tip 9,
Yeah.
that one was a personal project.
Then
And
it's
that,
in the project. I think you
yeah,
used it for the full project.
no, that was just a personal project, and that was just a personal project, and I was because I was going to present at Maxim, I don't know if it's IBC, I think, and
Oh,
so and I was showing some stuff, and I was like, oh, still not the full time that they want me to talk, and I was like, oh, maybe I can just show some cool technique, and then I was like, oh, maybe I can let me do something, and like I wasn't tab because I share a lot of stuff, a few quick tips, so I was like, I don't want to share what's already online, so I was like, I need to come up with something new. So that's how this project kind of started with me
it's
just
Maxon
like,
inspired.
yeah, Max inspired. It was like, how can I do something, Cinema that would be cool to show people. So this one was like, I had probably used this technique, not fully that technique, but something like this beforehand. And then was me kind of picking it up and being like, okay, how can I make this to take it to the next step and become like a cool project that I can also show how it's done. So that was how that was done.
And also, your work made it so it's the Cinema 4D splash screen last year.
Yes, no, this year actually, because it's the subscription. So
Right.
it was and this was beginning of this year. Yeah, I was really proud.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was really happy to do those, and it was fun. Like because it was creating one image and then kind of replicating that into different things like the team render and the light version and all the stuff. So like picking up the same concept and then expanding it and changing, having different colors for each one of them. So it was yeah, it's really
amazing.
fun.
This is how they work.
Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah,
that's the team render. Yeah, so each one had to go into a different thing.
that's amazing. Looks like Maxon. It feels like Maxon. I wanted to say thank you for like your channel, because like honestly, sometimes I'll just be having little issues and I'll just go on your page and I'll just check out how you solve that problem. Like especially this one, like your finishing touches video, I've watched it maybe like 3 times now, just checking how you do your final touches on your star frames before presenting them. And it's just really amazing. I would really love if you put more content on there.
I know. I started good, and then I had a baby, and then
Yeah.
time for things. So yeah, so I'm getting bad at it, but yeah, and then sometimes like I was like, okay, maybe I'll show this, and I usually base it on stuff that I've done, so it's not like, oh, I'll create something specific for a tutorial. I think that gets a bit harder as well sometimes. It's like
It's a tutorial on the lighting.
everyone asks me that. I'm not that great at lighting. I mean, it's like it's not like I have like a full on thing about how I do my lighting. It's very I'll say it's very basic. I always start with an HDRI, usually start with that and then add lights into it afterwards, like just to get the mood going first with an HDRI. So yeah,
What tools are like your go-to now? Like what tool? I know Cinema 4D is obviously everyone's go-to. I actually stopped using Cinema 4D last month and I decided to try Blender.
Yeah, a lot of people are going to Blender, yeah.
Yeah, mine, it wasn't like I wanted to try Blender, because it was because of like there's this piracy problem with Nigeria. A lot of softwares, like a lot of Nigerians don't pay for softwares, including me. So I've been trying to get a legal version of Cinema 4D. So I was like, boom, let me just go away from Cinema 4D for a while till I can find a legal version because it's wrong. And I've been trying to get my other designers to stop pirating software. But yeah, it's most of us really can afford like
Yeah, it's
a paid
expensive. Yeah,
version.
Blender looks great. Like, yeah, for
Yeah,
me, it's
it was really amazing. Like Blender has everything, but
yeah,
then it
it's
doesn't have enough tools. Like there isn't enough materials for motion with Blender. So you're kind of like trying to figure it out every time when you're in Blender. Like I'm working on a project right now, everything on Blender, and it was just really difficult. It's like, how do I get this? What Cinema 4D is really great at, which is motion. How do I get this sorry, what's the name of that tool again? This MoGraph tools. How do I make it work like that in Blender? It's just, oh god, I have to figure out how to organize it. It's just a very different workflow.
yeah. I feel like I don't know. Like when I was starting with Cine 4D, there wasn't much resources like it is now. So it's like Grayscale Gorilla, and then After Effects was Andrew Kramer, like Video Copilot, and that was mainly it. And I remember like trying to learn how to model, and I was looking at 3D Studio Max tutorials, and then trying to like whatever they're doing in 3D Studio Max. I was like, okay, let me see how I do that in Cine 4D. Yeah, I think it's like, yeah, I still use Cine 4D, and I think that's just because it's been my tool for such a long time. And because a lot of what I do is mainly stills, right? So I'm
It's
so
perfect
used to
for
it. Yeah,
stills.
I'm so used to it, and then I'm using Redshift for lighting and shading, and then I go between After Effects and Photoshop for like the grading and like comping. Depends on how much I have to do it. I try nowadays to do more in After Effects just because it became this thing where if you're showing a still as a style frame and the client goes like, yes, we love that, it just kind of, they just wanted to pretty much pick that style frame, animate it, and render it, right? So if I'm doing a lot of stuff in Photoshop, and then we have to animate it, it's a bit harder to like, it's not harder, but it's just a pain in the ass to how to do like the whole thing. Then in After Effects when you go down. So a lot of times when I'm doing projects, I try to do in After Effects. So then if they go like, oh, cool, now can you animate? It just, instead of just one image is a sequence, and then I already have all the settings and stuff that I put on top
Yeah,
of
so
it.
like you have the look in After Effects. So it's very easy to transfer it to your motion once it's done.
Yeah, that's what I try to do. It's like making sure that, but like I said, like not always. Like sometimes, depending if I'm just doing a still for like, I don't know, wallpaper or something like that, maybe that's, and I know that it doesn't have to be animated. I go on Photoshop because then I can like zoom in, paint some stuff, remove some stuff. Can be like super like perfectionist. With After
Yeah.
Effects, I'm much more into like the global thing, right? So the grading, like pushing the colors, contrast, like all that stuff. Where if I go to Photoshop, I'm most likely doing a lot of like zooming in and then like adjusting bits in here and there.
Things
But
that
yeah,
you normally would not be able to adjust in After Effects in the
well,
final video.
you would be able, but it will just take you longer time than doing it in
Yeah.
Photoshop. Yeah.
And also, sorry. So you're using Redshift and Cinema 4D and After Effects and Photoshop, because like a lot of people might be asking that. Sorry, what software is these? I just wanted to get that clear for people who didn't get that. Sorry, where was I? Now the final question is, what would you say to a young Nidia Diaz?
What would I say? I would say I don't know, I'll say that keep on pushing, because I feel like when I was young and I did a lot of those mistakes of like I didn't know what design was, so I went to like science and engineering, like and I remember being back then and thinking like, oh, what a mistake I've made, right? I should have gone to arts right away, or I should have done this, or I should have gone to that studio instead, or I should accept it. And the thing is that where I am today is based on the path that I've done, right? Like because I went 1 year to engineering school meant that when I went to like the graphic design course, it was that course was actually had been reformed and it was adding more stuff and more artifacts rather than if I had gone the year before, imagine. And then when that year that I decided to apply for Hyper, they had it in Stockholm and they didn't have the year before. So so like looking back, it's like I would tell myself like just keep going. It's like it's fine to have those hurdles and having like made mistakes, and because that's brought me where I am now. And probably
So you
if
wouldn't
I'd
change
gone,
anything,
no,
like
because I feel like I feel like like a lot of the things that I've done in life, my decisions, they were never decisions I was like, oh, in 5 years I want to be doing this, or in 10 years. Like I could never really, for some reason, I could never really answer those questions. Like where you'll see yourself in 5 years or 10 years. I'm much more of what I want to do now rather than later. So that's kind of where my decisions based. When I decided from going when I was learning graphic design to then going into motion, I was with my friends from university, at a cafe, and we're just talking. And then one of them goes like, "Yeah, we need to do stuff while we're young." And that resonated with me. It's like, yeah, if I want to do something, I should do it now. And then that's when I went home, and I was like, okay, maybe this motion thing should be a thing. I shouldn't just fantasize about it. And that day I went home and I searched for schools and then talked with my parents, saying like, hey, I think I want to move this forward. So I think my decisions are a lot more on the moment than thinking later. And it's easy when I was back then thinking, oh, should I have done this or not? But looking back, all those things made me be where I am nowadays, and I'm happy where I am nowadays. So I'll just say keep
looking at
pushing.
keep pushing. I think that's one thing I need to tell myself more. Because if I'm being honest, when I look at all the mistakes I've made in the past, I would say that those mistakes actually define who we are right now. Because honestly, if you look back, you wouldn't really want to change anything because humans learn from mistakes, and those mistakes are what makes us perfect, basically.
Yeah, definitely. Like, yeah, I mean, like, like sometimes you can, like I said, fantasize about like, oh, what if I had said yes to that thing or no to that thing, right? But I'll never know. Like, you can never know what that would have led to, right? And so for me, I'm happy where I am now. So then looking back, that the path that I took was great, right? Like I've met my husband on my internship. So if I would have gone early to, to motion graphics and design, like instead of going 1 year to engineer, probably I would have never met him, right? So there's always, like a
Yeah,
lot of things happening. So yeah, so I can't complain.
that makes a lot of sense. So I want us to take some audience questions. Then we sorry, then we look at more of your work. Then we can call it a day. Then okay. So one of the questions that sorry, let me ask a question that came to my mind first. Do you think it's like what would you say if about going to school for motion right now? Do you think it's something viable, or do you think someone should just learn it from YouTube or pay get a course on School of Motion or Motion Graph Mentor?
Well, I think nowadays, compared to my time, you have way more information online, which is great. Like for me, I was lucky, and I cannot say otherwise, to have parents that were able to help me, move to Sweden. Not everyone can do that. And I know friends of mine from my university that, they wanted to do courses and stuff like that, and they didn't have the economic power that my parents had to like borrow me money, to move and do a course somewhere else, right? So
Yes.
I feel like nowadays I would have probably done something online, knowing that my parents are borrowing me money. Like let me be more conscious and like, oh, I can actually do this one from home, because moving to Sweden to do the course at Hyper is like it's paying the course at Hyper plus living there and a whole new cost, right? It's not just the course, it's the whole living situation. Renting a room, eating there, like things that were
Being
much
alive.
more, yeah, it was much more expensive than here. So for me, I think like if I was now in that position of where, oh, I'm graphic design and I want to do motion, I would have probably done online stuff for now. um, just because I think it's much more approachable. You can do it at your own time, a lot of them, or it's cheaper than a tuition to schools and all the stuff, and moving completely to another country. But then again, like depends as well, like which people have in their countries in terms of schools and universities. Like some of them are pretty cool as well, and maybe you get like a good like off the bat going straight to like a good studio because you come from that school. That may also help. But I think nowadays is if you're, I think like I don't think it's so much about where you went to school, but what
Mm.
projects you showcase and what you know and what you do it. So I think nowadays it's more important. I mean, it's always been, but nowadays it's easier to
It's
learn
easier.
something
So we're
from like,
lucky. We're lucky.
well, yes and no. Like you're lucky because you have more resources, but you're also not lucky because there's much more people doing it, and much more people like having a computer and
You know,
having
I'm
access
lucky
to
because I'm in Nigeria. No one is doing motion. Just like
it. Yeah.
20 or 30 people doing
Yeah.
motion.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, it's always like a thing, like in when I started, there wasn't much about Instagram and like having a presence there. Now it
Mm.
feels like you have to have a presence there, or share your work much more than maybe I had to do in my time when I was starting. But yeah, I feel like for me, like yeah, I think I would go into like a online thing. I mean, I will still do the university, the graphic design, because that's just I think as well it's kind of in the brain of like here in Portugal, you go to high school, you go to university, yada yada.
Yeah.
But I definitely learned a lot more after university. Like it was very. So yeah, I guess it depends on teachers you have, or like there's a few schools I know that they get people from the industry to teach, and I think those are the coolest because then you're learning from someone that actually knows what they're talking about, right? They've been in the industry, they are in the industry currently, they are working with clients and stuff like that, so they know what they're teaching. Sometimes what may happen is in some universities you may get a teacher that their profession is being a teacher, right, of design or stuff like that.
Mm.
So they may give you like they may be very good in the theory part, but maybe they don't have that thing about like working with clients, what's nowadays, what people are asking about and all this stuff. And I feel that's something that Hyper keeps really good, is like always trying to find what the industry wants, and they
I
always
think a
seek
good
the
person
same
that has
thing, right?
that skill of being a teacher and also having experience working with clients is this guy I spoke to last. This amazing guy, Austin Shaw. And he's a teacher, he's a lecturer at the University of West Washington, I think. I hope I'm not messing it wrong. So like that's another, because someone's asking what school you went, and I just had to reply in the chat. You went to University of Hyper Island in Stockholm, Sweden.
Yeah, so I went to
So
university here in Portugal in Porto for design and multimedia communication. That was the course called, and then I went to Hyper Island to motion design.
to do motion, yeah. Because someone's asking like which schools can they go to. For me, I would just advise you take Mograph Mentors or School of Motion's course.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, there's plenty
I
now.
feel like
There's
you're
like,
part of the panel for I think Mograph Mentor.
yeah, I was a mentor there last semester actually. Mentor the art
Mentor.
direction. Yeah, I was a mentor there for the art direction one, and
I still
yeah, I've
have
been with them a
mentor
few
because I'm
times.
saving up to take the course.
Yeah, it's like with Mograph. I mean, School of Motion and Mograph Mentor are partly similar, but the Mograph Mentor is more about you doing a project that they kind of say like, okay, like in the art direction course was more like, okay, you choose one of these things if it's for a product or something like that, and then you think of the story and you develop it. And then as a mentor, every week we would have calls with the whole class and go for the project and kind of make sure that we're helping the student get to the full potential of that project, like, and giving feedback and like, and also like by seeing other people's work, and getting that thing in the class. That's mainly Mograph Mentor, but you also have the classes that you can look at and in
Friends.
the things. And then School of Motion, I've never done it obviously, but I think it's more if you're like learning After Effects, like that's
Yeah, I think
really
it's
good.
more
Like,
hands-on on the softwares and the tools.
yeah. Yeah, and demographic mentor is more on the like having the mentor, and it's
So
almost like, I guess also like it's almost like you want to do a personal project and you want to kind of like make it like making sure that it's like really good and like a good portfolio piece. Then you may go to demographic mentor, for example, for the art direction one, and
if
you
you're trying
have,
to get better at the software, then you go to School of
yeah.
Motion.
Yeah, so School of Motion, and I think some of the students that I had at Mograph Mentor had done first School of Motion and then did the Mograph Mentor afterwards as a complementary thing, for example. Yeah, there's those ones. There's one called Motion Design School as well. I never done a course there, but they also have a few
Yeah,
courses. Then there's like,
Motion Design School is like it's like let's say Skillshare. They have courses for motion, but it doesn't have that. It doesn't have anything extra like School of Motion and Mograph Mentor.
yeah, those ones, I think Motion Design School is more like you get the course and you do it on your own time.
Yeah,
Like you,
it's just
yeah,
like
and then
doing a course on Skillshare.
Yeah, and then School of Motion and MoGraph Mentor is much more. You have
Hands-on.
classes and like on every Saturday you would have a call with a mentor or something like that. So it's much more, and you have homework, right? It's much more. You need
Yeah,
to keep on showing stuff.
it's more
And
like a
well,
school, like a
yeah,
well-structured motion design school
yeah.
than an online course. That's why I feel like I would recommend it to anyone. Just save up, pay for it because it's perfect. Honestly, because it's perfect. Okay, the next question from the audience is, how do you transition from graphic design to motion design? Like, how would you advise anyone transition from graphic design to motion design?
I think would be understanding if you want to go the 2D route first or the 3D route. Because when I started, I went first to the 2D route. So because my stuff was like 2D-ish shapes and all the stuff, so I was learning After Effects and then picking up my own stuff and then trying to animate that. That's how I did the transition. Was I really wanted to have my stuff animated, so it was okay. Which software, or how can I do this? So I was like, oh, After Effects. Okay, let me learn about After Effects, and then learn the basics about After Effects. And then once I had those basics and doing small projects, then it was like, okay, now let me pick one of my images that I've done in the past and make my own animation. And I think that's the most important thing is with any tutorial or course is making sure that at the end you do your own thing rather than just following along and just doing exactly the same thing. Like I always, when I was learning even Photoshop, I remember I would just go through quickly for like, okay, what's the technique? How are they approaching this? And then once I found the technique, I'll just do with my own stuff. Like I wouldn't, because when I was
You
learning,
don't
there was
copy exactly what they were doing.
there was like computer arts and they would come with a CD at the time, when people actually could put CDs on their computers.
The
And
dinosaurs.
yeah. And you come with like the images that they would use on the tutorial that you see on the magazine, and the idea was like you follow along. And I did that for the first tutorial. I was like, oh, this is boring. I'm doing someone else's image. That was my first thinking. I was like, ah. So then after that first tutorial, that's all I did every time was like, I just want to understand the technique and then do it on my own way from my own like style. So that's what I think people should do is like learn the tool that will allow you to like move into motion from the still to the motion, right? But then make it your own, right? And that's how you become you as a motion designer is picking what you're learning and getting that sense of that you have from the graphic design and doing your own language, having your own style.
That makes sense. I think someone is asking, what is the spec of your computer? Because when we're talking about Cinema 4D and Redshift, and people tend to get obsessed about computer specs.
Yeah, I have. I'm not much of a geek and nerd about the specs. I'm probably not the best one to like what's the best ones to have, but I have a Z4 from HP, and also have a monitor that is from Dreamcolor from HP. So it's like a set. So I don't have a custom build. First because I'm terrible spec again. I don't know what things goes with it. So this one just comes built in. And then I have with the Z4 I have NVIDIA Quadro P6000. So it's not
Wow.
so it's but just one, but it does a lot. And then I have RAM. I start with 64 and now I have 128.
Jesus, I'm just in
I,
32.
well, it's because like I use Vex particles and stuff like that, and that's still very CPU based.
Use low RAM.
Yeah, it needs a lot of RAM still. But yeah, definitely like Redshift is much more GPU, but then X particles is still CPU based. So
I think Redshift manages both your. Sorry, I'm kind of a nerd in this
no, it's
part.
because I'm not. I definitely not a nerd. I'm just
Redshift
so happy.
manages CPU and
I'm
GPU.
just I'm just happy that I don't have to. I didn't have to think of mounting
Like
a
if you're doing a
computer.
lot of animation, you would have to get something like more graphics card. But since you're not, I don't think you would worry about that right now.
No, yeah,
And you
for
just
me
use stills.
it works great. Like what I need is to be fast on my renders and stills, and if I'm doing something X particles, I need it to be fast, and it does. And then HP has this Dream Color monitor, which is like really accurate color. So again, I don't have to think about are these colors going to look good and all this stuff. I just trust it. So yeah, I'm terrible at these things. I have a friend of mine that really knows about like a lot of those like what NVIDIA card to get and what's best. So sometimes I'm like, what do you think? I just ask him stuff. I'm not really good at it, but that's fine for me. I didn't want for a custom build because it's, for me at least, it feels that you need to understand the things and you need to like
I think
maintain
if you,
it more.
I think
And
if
this
you
way,
build
I
it
don't do
once,
anything.
I think it's like playing Lego, though. It's not identical.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it was something that, because I was using Mac before, like a few years back. So for me, it was, with Mac, you don't think much. You just buy from their store. So transitioning to PC world was much better to just buy a ready-made one. That still works great. So yeah, I have the Z4 for 2 years now and cannot complain. Still
That
working
makes
good.
sense. The next question from the audience is, what was the biggest challenge when you started?
I think one of the biggest challenges was actually communication. Like I'm also shy. Like I'm much better now, but it was, like you when you get to this position, you have to talk with everyone, the team, producers, the client, and I think that was the biggest struggle. It's like you have an idea and you want to talk, but you don't want to like, oh, should I wait for them to finish? That person's going to talk? It's for me definitely was the biggest hurdle. Was like, and it still is communication. Yeah, definitely.
I think it's the same year. Is something I'm still struggling with, communication, because I honestly thought I was a people person, but no, I am not. I don't like always interacting, but communication is like a very big hurdle for me, and I'm hoping I get better anytime soon. Okay, someone is asking if you would recommend a course from Division 05 or 05 rather. I don't know if you've heard of them.
No.
Division 05.
I don't think so. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe if you show me, I know, but I don't recognize.
I think I'll just share the link to them. But honestly, I wouldn't want you to endorse anyone you don't know. But then I have actually tried to see their YouTube before. Like I've gone through their YouTube before, and it looks great. So like honestly, I would say you should take it. Like it looks like a really good course. They have courses on style frames and composition.
Yeah, I feel
Different
like
courses.
a lot of them also have like, I guess, reviews and all this stuff, right? I guess for me it's hard to like the same with School of Motion. Like I've never done it, right? So I just know what people say about it. Or in MoGraph Mentor is different because I've been a mentor there, so I
There's a
know
mentor.
I know the background, like what's the program and all the stuff. But yeah, other than that, I can just, the same with motion design school. I just seen their stuff online and like looks good,
Yes.
and if it is good or not, like I've never tried, I never done it, so I can't really really like say, okay,
I think
go for
since
it.
you already had experience with school, I think the courses that you probably will be taking now are probably courses on the tools.
Yeah.
Because like maybe you want to try out Octane, for example. Have you ever tried out Octane though?
I've tried it. I prefer Redshift. I think
Same
it's
here. I
about
think
preference.
I like
Yeah.
Redshift. I can't wait for Redshift. I think Maxon is working on a Redshift version for Blender, because I think I'm going to be sticking with Blender. But then I really love Cinema 4D. I find it difficult to leave Cinema 4D, but I think I would be sticking with Blender. But Maxon is working on a Redshift version, and I think
I
it's
mean, I like Redshift,
better.
and the thing is, the times that I use Redshift or I used in the past Arnold and stuff like that, that became one the studios that I was working on. Like I was full time at Analog and they're using Arnold, so I had to learn Arnold. Or when I went to Tendril, they were using Redshift, so I learned Redshift. So
But then
it
you
was
love
always,
Redshift.
and yeah, I also love Arnold, but it's just because most of the studios that I work with, even as a freelance, I'll say 90% of it that I've worked with use Redshift. So for me, it just makes
I think
sense.
I started with Anode because my previous computer, because I was obviously very broke. I'm still a very broke motion designer, and I can't afford getting the beefy PC. And my last PC was like, it didn't have a GPU, so it was just a CPU. And Anode is CPU
CPU
based,
based, yeah.
so like it
Yeah,
was
I
perfect.
had Mac. That's why I was using as well.
Yeah,
Arnold. I mean, now they have GPU, but is it? Yeah, it's
but
out
I
now.
prefer the CPU. Like, but then Redshift has a way of managing both CPU and GPUs together, which is what makes it really, really, really fast. Because like if you notice, Octane is much slower than Redshift, and
I guess
Redshift is
it, I
just
guess
fast.
I guess it depends on the
On the scene.
Yeah, on the scene and all the stuff. I think some things work better. Like I think I used one time Octane for a project, like a small part of a project, because Octane has the really good Octane scatter at the time, and it just made my life easier. So I just used
That makes
Octane
sense.
for that section. So I think it's all about like finding the tools that work better for the project or for the style frame or whatever. So yeah.
So the next question is, I heard you it's from by me, by the way. I heard you collaborate a lot with designers around the world. How do you pick your collaborations?
Well, most of the times the project I do with people are full time when I'm freelancing, so they're part of the team. So I'm lucky to have work with a lot of cool people. And then a lot of the collaborations I do lately is with my husband, because like I get a project and then I need help, and then I just turn around, look to my husband computer, and like, hey, I have this project. Do you want to help me out? But yeah, I definitely like collaborating with people. You learn so much.
That makes sense. Someone is asking how you got your first design job. I think you talked about it in the
Yes,
beginning.
I got an internship at Mainframe in London, and as I was finishing my internship there, they offered me a job. So that's pretty much how I got my
First
was
job.
from internship. Yeah, first I got lucky, and they needed some help. They liked how I performed on my internship, so they just offered me a job.
So this is where we're going to stop with the live stream today. I really had enjoyed the last 1 hour of my life talking about just nerding off about like motion design stuff and art direction. And from what we've discussed, I'm going to take action for myself and work on a couple of personal, like I have this whiteboard here and I just get random ideas of personal projects and I just listed there. I would really sit down and take action and actually work on them and put them just use them, because they've been lying on, like this idea has been on my board for like 2 months now and I haven't done anything about it. So I'm just going to sit down, take time to work on my personal project, get better, and hopefully I'll be a full art director in the next few months. Thank you very much for
thanks for inviting me.
Your time. Let me quickly go off live. So bye guys. It's really nice having this call with you guys.